Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Holotide here, and I've been thinking about how I wanted to make this video for a couple days now. There's been a lot of Halo, not necessarily news, but just little tidbits of information here and there from the Fanta, or Fanta, I guess. I don't know if you guys remember the song, but it was always Fanta, Fanta, so I always say Fanta, but other people say Fanta. Anyways, there was that kind of stuff, and then the, like, cut maps or canceled maps that were going to come to Halo Infinite that weren't finished. As Halo gets closer and closer to, I guess, us finding out the campaign evolved release date, a lot of people have been talking about Halo. Some good, some bad. You know, there's people that are like, the franchise is cooked. There are people who are like, it's going to be fine. But we are sitting at this really weird, important moment for the series. And I don't think enough people are framing it that way. I think, personally, that the next two Halo games are not just games. They're really another job interview for Halo Studios. We had the handoff from Bungie to 343, and now this 343 to Halo Studios transition. And I really do think that the outcome of both games are going to determine whether Halo really does have this real future, or will slowly fade away into one of those franchises people just reference when they're feeling nostalgic, and a lot of people will argue that that's already the case. But I look at what Halo Infinite did on release, and, you know, even on Steam, and had like 200 and some thousand people playing it. Like, people want to play a good Halo game. People want Halo to thrive and succeed. All right, Holotide from the future, or editing Holotide, I don't know, something like that. I'm not gonna lie, I have been trying to make this video for like a week, and it seems like every day there's something else happening around Halo, and not a lot of it is positive. But the most recent thing that's happened before I just upload this video at this point was that Halo's old art director claims that there was threat and retaliation and all this stuff from Microsoft and Halo Studios. There was a ton of misconduct and organizational issues, basically saying that they were mishandling Campaign Evolved and that the leadership stuff just really hasn't changed still. But Glenn Israel went on LinkedIn. He alleged serious misconduct involving Halo Studios and Microsoft. And while I do think that sometimes there are disgruntled employees who have been let go or laid off or fired who come back and talk trash about their former employer, and that you got to take a grain of salt with everything because there's always two sides to every story, I do think that more often than not, giant corporation HR stuff and the little guy, it tends to be a little one-sided. So he also had other former employees of Halo Studios come to his defense as well. And this is somebody that had worked at Bungie back in 2008 and then joined 343 when it was formed. But again, he said it was unethical and unlawful. He filed complaints with Microsoft HR that he was harassed. And then again, he alleged that Halo Campaign Evolved was experiencing what he describes as catastrophic mismanagement by senior Halo Studios reps. And because of that, and he was also working on an unannounced Halo project, but because the Campaign Evolved stuff was just being mishandled, he was put on Campaign Evolved, but then his art team was reassigned, and then his role was labeled as redundant. And man, sometimes being a Halo fan is just, it feels rough. Now, I really thought that we would be turning a corner finally with, you know, getting new leadership in and stuff like that. And that remains to be seen still. It's got to be done through actions. I would love to see something official. You know, Microsoft responded that, you know, they like to respect the previous employees and they look into everything and they're not going to disclose anything. But man, it would be great if there was some type of like public just acknowledgement at this point, or with Asha taking control of Xbox and everything. I just don't know, man. Like, I get sad every day thinking about Halo. But that's just the newest thing in a long line of Halo news. So I'm gonna get back to the original video before I had to add this in. So, Future Corey signing off. I saw a tweet about somebody that's like, you know, Halo's cursed. Somebody poisoned the water hole the other day. And I know that it can feel like that sometimes. You know, it feels like we just haven't caught a break in the last couple of games. And I get it, Halo 4, very divisive amongst fans. Halo 5, very divisive amongst fans. Halo Infinite, I feel probably maybe the least divisive, maybe the most universally like, oh, 343 is starting to really understand what Halo is and how to make the franchise and series, but it had a slew of problems, and it just feels like the Halo fan base has just been so fragmented over the course of over 2 decades at this point. There are fans of the Bungie games, and then within the Bungie games, there are fans of certain Halos of that, and then there are fans of like Reach, and then there are fans of 343 games. There are fans of Sprint. There are fans who don't like Sprint. Then you have like the casual versus ranked sweat pro player debates, and it's a lot. And I don't actually truly believe, like with anything in life, that you can make everybody happy. And Halo, man, it does not have its work cut out for it. So, like I said before, 343 is now Halo Studios. They didn't just change the name, they changed the engine. They're changing their platform strategy. And I guess they're kind of changing where they're starting from. So instead of making Halo 7, they're going back to Combat Evolved, now Campaign Evolved. It's going to be in the Unreal Engine 5. It's going to come to Xbox, PC, and for the first time in Halo's history, PlayStation 5. And to me, that just basically says, we want to go back to the beginning. I think ideally they would have really studied Combat Evolved to understand what made it work and what made Halo Halo. And this is their chance to prove that they understand it. And I think that this matters so much. Now, before we get into the rest of the video, if you guys haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of Halo content. We do some marathon content as well. Halo has been in kind of a dry spell. I'm just waiting for, all the marketing and stuff for Campaign Evolved to pick up. Truth be told, I am cautiously optimistic about that game, and I hope that it really finds its footing. But that remains to be seen, and we're going to talk about why. So a couple days ago, there was an insider who said that, there's a lot of things going on within Campaign Evolved's development. And if you don't want to enter the spoiler territory, don't keep listening. But basically that they were using models from Halo Infinite and assets from Halo Infinite, and they were allocating resources to other parts of the game, which includes like the prequel missions. Now, I look at that and I think, like this is a budget thing. Microsoft wants to keep costs like down because it's a single player only release. Don't want to remake every asset, and so these other resources are being funneled into the prequel missions apparently. And now that version of it is okay to me. Asset reuse is normal. Every studio does it. I think, personally, that the Infinite models are pretty good. Dropping them into Campaign Evolved isn't inherently a problem. The game's running on Unreal Engine 5, so it's going to look completely different from Infinite anyways. And if they want to keep a more cohesive, like, art style to the franchise going forward, I understand. I see the other viewpoint where it's like, well, that doesn't look like the Combat Evolved version of the characters and stuff like that. And I did have a video where I really talked about why Combat Evolved's art style and aesthetic is so important to that game. Like, the identity is what made that game feel so special and like its own thing, in my opinion. So if we're getting Halo Infinite's aesthetic just piped into Combat Evolved's level design, that's not really a reimagining. That's more of a reskin, and then you got some new missions just like bolted onto it. And I think that people find that a much less interesting proposition. I also think that it signals, the budget and the confidence that Microsoft has in this project. If they're cutting corners on a remake that's supposed to be the franchise's big statement, its multi-platform debut, its 25th anniversary centerpiece, that's kind of like a red flag for Microsoft from me. Like, I would think that they would be like, here's all the money and resources that you need, go make this thing sick. And maybe internally Microsoft doesn't see it like that, which would stink in my opinion. But clearly, Campaign Evolved is a test. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a cash grab and stuff like that. Like, obviously the game needs to make money and the studio needs to make money and Microsoft wants to make money, but it's a test. It's not really about Combat Evolved. It's more about if Halo Studios has actually figured out what went wrong. I really feel like sometimes the problems with 343's Halos weren't just technical, like not just bugs or missing features and stuff like that. I think there was a broader feeling across the fan base that the studio didn't quite get what made Halo special, even though there were people that have worked on previous, like Bungie Halos at 343. I think they understood it intellectually, but not intuitively, maybe because you had all these new people working on the franchise that weren't there from the beginning, and it's really hard when you just start over like that, or there's like a minority of devs who were at the old studio who are trying to teach the new devs what makes Halo Halo. So when Halo Studios is like, we're going back to where it all started, what I hear is we're going to show you that we know what this franchise is. We're going to take the one game that started everything and we're going to do it justice. And if we do that, then you have reason to trust us with the next step. And I think that that's a big underlying issue, is that people just don't have a lot of trust. There's a lot of like influencers and journalists and all these people on Twitter and stuff where they're like, oh, it's just constant 343 and Halo Studios backlash. And I do think that that bleeds into like the greater gaming community. Anecdotally, I've had people tell me that they don't play Halo because they hear that it's bad. So take that however you want. But the next step would be obviously the new mainline Halo game, Halo 7 or Halo Infinite 2 or whatever that's supposed to be. A new story, new multiplayer maybe. I don't know if we're ever going to get a standalone multiplayer game at this point. We will see. But Campaign Evolved is the proof of concept for that. It needs to come first, because Halo Studios can't waltz their way into an original game and ask for trust that they haven't earned yet. It's just been a name change and stuff like that. They can't do that with the Halo community. And there's really, I want to say two different ways. It either goes well or it doesn't go well. And if it goes well, it's not just like decent reviews or anything like that, but it has fans coming away feeling like the soul of the original game is intact and the new stuff genuinely adds to it. I think that that helps to like start to shift something. Like, it can't just be decent scores on review sites. Like, it really does have to come from the community. It's gotta, you boot it up and within the first hour, 30 minutes, it's just clicking. It feels right, it looks right, it's immediately recognizable. That specific rhythm of Halo is there. It's just flowing. And if they're able to preserve that feeling, not just like technically, but like all the other emotional attachments, then that's the foundation that everything else is going to get built on. It means the new prequel missions don't just feel like content slapped onto it. They feel like they were always supposed to be there, like finding a chapter of a book that you didn't even know was missing, or like a prequel to one of your favorite shows. It just provides more context and it's more of what you love. And that's a hard thing to pull off, because if these missions are just adding context, but they don't really give you a reason to care more about either the characters or what's coming after, then that is kind of a dropped ball, in my opinion. And just thinking about all this stuff and what it means from like the PlayStation side of things, like there are going to be so many new fans potentially that have never played Halo, not just like lapsed Halo fans that are coming back or anything like that. There's a huge portion of the population that grew up with the PlayStation. That's all they know. They've heard about Halo and stuff, then the console wars and all that good stuff. And this is their first time playing it and seeing it. And that can mean that Halo is thrust into the lives of so many new people. And if they like it, then Halo 7 is even more interesting at that point in terms of what it can do and how popular it can be. So if Halo Studios is able to really create something special with Campaign Evolved, it's both loved by fans and critics. They're able to walk into something that they've never really had before, and that's recent proof that they know what they're doing. And I think that that changes everything, really. But on the flip side, if it doesn't hit, then I think that that's really worrisome. If it comes out just being fine, like technically it's okay, it's visually impressive. It's just working. Nothing's really broken. If the new missions are just there and they're okay, and it gets like a review of a 75, and people are like, it's a solid remake, and that's it. After a couple of months, it's already forgotten about. Then I think that that's a failure given the context. This is not a new IP with no expectations. This is the 25th anniversary of one of the most important games, not just in Xbox history, but in the history of gaming, and it's being rebuilt from scratch, launching on a new platform for the first time ever. The bar is not like competent. The bar needs to be like, this is undeniable quality. And I can almost picture that okay version of Campaign Evolved. Like something is just slightly off and you can't really articulate what it is. It's not really broken, but it feels like something's missing. The weight of combat isn't right or something like that. Just the pacing feels off. Just something wrong. I think people would say that maybe it just feels hollow. No pun intended. And really, the PlayStation audience is the audience that I really keep thinking about in this like what if situation. Those are the people that have no prior like emotional investment in Halo. They don't have that muscle memory of loving the franchise. They're coming in completely fresh. And if it's just meh on their platform, it just becomes, like this expensive experiment for Microsoft and Halo Studios that just didn't pan out right. And that really does worry me. And I really try not to like think about it, but what does a failed Campaign Evolved mean for Microsoft and for Halo Studios at that point? But where do I actually land on all this? I said it before, cautiously optimistic. The stuff that they've talked about publicly suggests that there's a team that has done some real reckoning with what has gone wrong in the past. I'm excited for Halo to go multi-platform and potentially bring in a whole new generation of fans. Hopefully this is how Halo Studios can start building trust again, and it's just like the first domino in this new rebuild of Halo. Or it could be like the previous releases and people are excited, they give it a shot, and it's just not what it used to be. And that sucks to think about. So hopefully Halo Studios is able to reignite that flame, because I, for one, am dying to have like a really good Halo. I'm not even talking about Campaign Evolved at that point. Like I'm ready for whatever the next Halo 7, or just original Halo game, whether it's a spin-off or anything like that. I'm just ready. I miss having that itch to play multiplayer Halo. I'm dying to get back. So the ball is in Halo Studios court, and we'll see what they do with it. But that's it for the video, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!